In January 2012, the body of 22-year-old Camille Banks was discovered in her upscale apartment in Atlanta, Georgia. The shocking murder sent ripples through the city and quickly became a national story. As investigators unraveled the case, they uncovered a tangled web of lies, betrayal, and obsession that began months earlier. At the heart of the tragedy was NBA superstar Desmond "Daz" Chambers, a man revered by millions, whose secret affair with Camille had spiraled into deadly consequences. This is the story of ambition, power, and the devastating cost of secrets. On the 16th of January, 2012, the city of Atlanta woke to the chilling news of a murder that would soon grip the nation. Camille Banks, a vibrant 22-year-old law student and professional cheerleader, was found dead in her upscale apartment on Peachtree Street. The building, known for its luxurious interiors and tight security, had always been a symbol of safety for its residents. Yet, on that icy January morning, it became the epicenter of a tragedy. The discovery was made by Camille's best friend, Alyssa Green. Alyssa had grown concerned after Camille missed an early morning study session. Camille, known for her punctuality and commitment, had not returned calls or messages, which was unlike her. Alyssa decided to check on her, fearing that something might have been wrong. Using the spare key Camille had given her, Alyssa stepped into the apartment, immediately sensing that something was off. The air felt heavy, and the normally immaculate living space appeared oddly disheveled. In the dim light of the living room, Alyssa spotted a crimson scarf lying on the floor, its vibrant hue standing out against the beige carpet. The scarf led her to the bedroom, where she stumbled upon a scene that would haunt her forever. Camille was lying lifeless on the floor, her delicate features marred by the signs of a violent struggle. Her neck bore deep red marks, evidence of the silk scarf that had been used to strangle her. Nearby, a single rose rested on the dresser, its petals untouched, as though mocking the chaos around it. A handwritten note lay beside the rose, the words, "I'm sorry," scrawled hastily, as if written in panic or regret. Alyssa fled the apartment in terror, calling 911 with trembling hands. The dispatcher's voice tried to calm her, but her sobs made it difficult to understand her words. Within minutes, police and paramedics arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the quiet street. Camille's body was officially pronounced dead at the scene. The police began their work, cordoning off the apartment and meticulously combing through every inch for clues. Detective Aaron McCall, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving high-profile cases, was assigned to lead the investigation. His sharp eyes took in the chaotic scene, noting every detail: the rose, the note, the scarf, and the overturned furniture. To him, this was no random act of violence. The personal nature of the crime, coupled with the rose and note, suggested that Camille knew her killer. This was a crime of passion, not a burglary gone wrong. As news of Camille's death spread, her family and friends were thrown into grief. Camille's mother, Patricia Banks, flew in from Charlotte, her heart breaking with every mile that brought her closer to the reality she dreaded. Camille had been her pride and joy, a beacon of hope in their family. The young woman had balanced her rigorous law studies with her cheerleading career, exuding confidence and determination in everything she did. By the 18th of January, 2012, the investigation was in full swing. Detectives began questioning Camille's friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Alyssa was one of the first to be interviewed, recounting her friendship with Camille and the events leading up to the gruesome discovery. She spoke about Camille's radiant personality, her love for her family, and her unrelenting drive to succeed. But Alyssa also hinted at a more complex side of Camille, a secret life that even her closest friends barely understood. Neighbors recalled hearing faint sounds of an argument on the night of January 15th, but none could pinpoint the exact time or identify who was involved. The building's security cameras were reviewed, and it was there that the first real lead emerged. At 10:42 p.m., the grainy footage captured a tall, athletic man entering Camille's apartment. His face was obscured by a hood, but his posture and build caught the detective's attention. The time of his entrance aligned with the estimated time of death. Forensics worked tirelessly, examining every piece of evidence from the apartment. The silk scarf bore traces of DNA, and the rose stem revealed faint fingerprints. As the evidence was processed, the investigators began to piece together a timeline of Camille's final hours. Then, on the 25th of January, 2012, a breakthrough came. A tip from a colleague of Camille's pointed the police toward Desmond Chambers, a towering figure in the sports world. The NBA superstar had met Camille at a charity event months earlier. Though their connection seemed professional on the surface, whispers of a deeper, more personal relationship had begun to emerge. The surveillance footage from that fateful night only added to the suspicion. The man entering Camille's apartment bore an uncanny resemblance to Chambers. The case took a decisive turn on the 3rd of February, 2012, when a search warrant was executed at Desmond's lavish mansion. Among the pristine trophies and framed jerseys that lined the walls, investigators found an item that sent chills through the team. Hidden in a drawer in the master bedroom was a delicate gold necklace with a tiny heart pendant, one that Camille's mother confirmed had belonged to her daughter. It was a gift from Patricia, given to Camille on the day she graduated high school. Alongside the necklace were a pair of earrings, also identified as Camille's, tucked away as though someone had wanted them out of sight. With the evidence mounting, Desmond Chambers was arrested at dawn that same day. The sight of the celebrated athlete in handcuffs sent shockwaves through the community. He maintained his innocence, his composed demeanor masking any hint of guilt. But for the detectives, the physical evidence and timeline painted a different picture, a story of jealousy, passion, and desperation that led to a young woman's tragic end. In 2011, Desmond "Daz" Chambers was a name spoken with reverence in the sports world. At 27 years old, he stood at the pinnacle of his career, a celebrated basketball player with endorsements, awards, and a fan base that adored him. His charisma extended beyond the court, where he was seen as a family man who gave generously to charities and spoke fondly of his wife, Mia. Together, they were a picture-perfect couple, the kind that graced magazine covers and inspired admiration. Mia, his high school sweetheart, was not only his partner in love, but also his business manager, skillfully shaping his brand into a multi-million-dollar empire. But beneath this facade of perfection, cracks were beginning to form. Camille Banks was nothing like the people Desmond usually mingled with. Raised in a modest household in Decatur, Georgia, she was a young woman with big dreams. At 22, she was working tirelessly to earn a law degree at Emory University. Her brilliance and determination had earned her a scholarship, but money was still tight. To make ends meet, Camille joined a professional cheerleading squad. The role brought her into the orbit of Atlanta's elite, where she often mingled with powerful and wealthy individuals. Camille stood out not just for her beauty, but for her infectious energy and sharp intellect. She was a woman who seemed destined for greatness. The two first crossed paths at a charity gala in the spring of 2011. Desmond, the event's keynote speaker, was introduced to Camille by a mutual acquaintance. Their interactions started innocently. Camille expressed admiration for his work both on and off the court, while Desmond was struck by her charm. At first, Their exchanges were professional, polite conversations at events, or the occasional email about charity work. But over time, their connection deepened. Desmond found himself drawn to Camille in a way he couldn't ignore. For Camille, the attention of a global superstar like Desmond was intoxicating. She was captivated by his charm, the way he spoke with confidence, and his promises of something more meaningful than the glamorous but superficial world she was starting to see around her. By late 2011, their relationship had turned romantic. Desmond's wealth and influence made her feel protected, and his whispered assurances convinced her that their love was real. She believed him when he said his marriage to Mia was all but over, a hollow shell held together for the sake of appearances. But Desmond was not entirely honest. Despite his claims, his marriage to Mia remained intact. Mia was not just his wife, she was the architect of his public image. She managed his career with precision, ensuring every sponsorship deal and public appearance aligned with their brand. Mia had built her life around Desmond's success, and she was fiercely protective of their union. She had begun to notice subtle changes in her husband's behavior, late nights at business meetings, a growing distance in their conversations, and a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Though Mia suspected infidelity, she lacked proof and chose to focus on their shared goals. By late 2011, Camille began to sense that Desmond's promises were empty. The late-night calls grew less frequent, and his visits became rushed. Desmond assured her that everything was under control, but his actions told a different story. Camille, a woman of ambition and integrity, refused to be relegated to a secret. She had dreams of a future, one that didn't involve hiding in the shadows. As the year drew to a close, Camille made a decision that would change everything. She confronted Desmond, demanding clarity and honesty. She had begun saving evidence of their relationship, text messages, emails, and photographs that painted a vivid picture of their affair. In early January 2012, Camille threatened to expose the truth. She was tired of being dismissed and betrayed, and she wanted Desmond to face the consequences of his actions. She made it clear that if he did not honor his promises, she would reveal everything to the world. Desmond was thrown into a spiral of panic. His carefully constructed life hung in the balance. The thought of losing Mia, his career, and the adoration of millions was unbearable. Camille's threat wasn't just personal. It was a dagger aimed at the heart of everything he had worked for. Desmond's fear quickly turned into desperation, and desperation gave way to anger. He began to grow possessive, unwilling to let Camille take control of the narrative. He insisted that she remain silent, using both charm and intimidation to keep her from acting on her threat. Then came January 15th, 2012. Desmond arrived at Camille's apartment late in the evening. Neighbors later reported hearing the door slam and muffled voices rising in argument. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Camille, resolute in her decision, refused to back down. She demanded accountability, laying out the evidence she had gathered. Desmond, visibly shaken, tried to regain control, but his words only fueled Camille's resolve. The argument escalated, becoming a heated exchange that echoed through the walls. Camille's voice carried a tone of defiance, while Desmond's grew increasingly agitated. Neighbors heard the sounds of furniture being moved, a sharp crash, and then silence. The night grew quiet again, and no one thought to intervene. Hours later, Camille's lifeless body was discovered, and the carefully woven threads of Desmond's life began to unravel. The events of that night would remain shrouded in mystery, but the fallout would reveal the depth of betrayal, desperation, and obsession that had led to a young woman's tragic end. In the weeks following Desmond Chambers' arrest on February 3, 2012, the investigation into Camille Banks' death became the focal point of national attention. Detectives Aaron McCall and his team worked tirelessly, piecing together a damning narrative from scattered clues. The evidence was not just physical, it was digital, emotional, and deeply personal, painting a picture of betrayal, obsession, and ultimately, violence. The first breakthrough came when Camille's phone was unlocked. Its contents provided a chilling glimpse into her final days. The text messages between Camille and Desmond revealed a tumultuous relationship. Camille had expressed her growing frustration and fear, while Desmond's responses oscillated between pleading apologies and angry dismissals. The texts, laced with desperation, detailed Camille's threats to expose their affair and Desmond's frantic attempts to keep her quiet. In addition to the messages, surveillance footage from the night of January 15, 2012, captured Desmond entering Camille's apartment. He had arrived just after 10:40 p.m., his hood pulled low, and he stayed for over 2 hours. This timeline matched the estimated window of Camille's death. Though the footage didn't show what happened inside, it placed him at the scene, contradicting his initial alibi. Desmond's alibi, once confidently delivered, began to unravel as detectives dug deeper. He had claimed to be attending a private meeting at a downtown hotel with his agent and sponsors. However, when pressed, neither his agent nor the hotel staff could corroborate his presence. The inconsistencies cast a shadow over his credibility, making his guilt appear increasingly undeniable. Witness testimony further complicated Desmond's defense. Neighbors from Camille's apartment building reported hearing heated arguments on multiple occasions in the weeks leading up to her death. One neighbor, a retired teacher who lived across the hall, recalled the distinct sound of Camille's voice raised in anger, followed by Desmond's deeper tones on the night of the murder. The testimonies painted a grim picture of a relationship fraught with tension and power struggles. By the time the trial began in early 2013, the case had become a media sensation. The revelation of Desmond's affair shocked fans who had idolized him as a wholesome, family-oriented superstar. The public grappled with the idea that the man they cheered for on the court could be capable of such darkness. Camille's death, meanwhile, sparked a broader conversation about power dynamics in relationships, the exploitation of trust, and the danger of unchecked privilege. The courtroom drama was as explosive as the headlines promised. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Marcy White, built a meticulous case against Desmond. She framed him as a manipulative figure who used his charm and influence to control Camille. Her narrative revolved around the idea that Desmond had killed Camille in a fit of rage, driven by the fear of losing everything he had built: his career, his marriage, and his reputation. White presented the text messages as evidence of his escalating desperation, pointing to the chilling tone of his last exchanges with Camille. The defense, led by high-profile attorney Stephen Lang, argued that Camille's death was a tragic accident during a consensual encounter. Lang attempted to portray Camille as emotionally unstable, suggesting that her threats to expose the affair were exaggerated cries for attention. He argued that Desmond had gone to Camille's apartment that night to reconcile, and the confrontation had taken an unforeseen turn. Lang focused on Desmond's clean criminal record and his history as a charitable, family-oriented man. Throughout the trial, Desmond sat stoically, his expression unreadable. His wife, Mia, attended every session initially, sitting silently in the gallery. But as the weeks went on, her presence grew less frequent. Behind the scenes, Mia was grappling with her own devastation. The man she had loved since high school was now a stranger to her, and the public scandal had thrust her into the harsh spotlight of scrutiny. Mia, ever pragmatic, began to distance herself, consulting lawyers and financial advisors to protect her own future. The testimonies were harrowing. Camille's mother, Patricia Banks, spoke of her daughter's dreams and the life that had been cruelly taken from her. Her voice broke as she described the last time she had spoken to Camille, unaware it would be their final conversation. Forensic experts detailed the physical evidence, including the scarf used to strangle Camille and the bruises that suggested a violent struggle. The media frenzy outside the courthouse mirrored the intensity inside. Protesters held signs demanding justice for Camille, while Desmond's remaining supporters argued for his innocence. The trial became a microcosm of broader societal issues: abuse of power, the fragility of fame, and the vulnerability of women caught in the orbit of powerful men. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The weight of the evidence, the emotional pleas from Camille's family, and the inconsistencies in Desmond's story all led to a swift conclusion. On a cold day in March 2013, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Desmond's stoic facade finally cracked as the sentence was read: 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted, some in relief, others in despair. For Mia, the verdict was the final blow. Shortly after the trial, she filed for divorce, citing irreparable damage to their marriage. She took control of their joint assets, using the public sympathy that had shifted in her favor to rebuild her own life. Her transformation from devoted wife to independent businesswoman became a story of resilience, a stark contrast to Desmond's fall from grace. The trial's conclusion brought justice for Camille's family, but left lingering questions about the choices and pressures that led to her tragic death. The world had seen a hero fall and a young woman's life stolen. In the aftermath, Camille's story became a powerful reminder of the cost of secrets and the devastating ripple effects of unchecked power. In the wake of the trial's conclusion, in March 2013, life for everyone connected to Camille Banks's tragic story changed in profound ways. Camille's family, once tightly bound by shared hope for her bright future, now found themselves navigating a new reality shaped by grief and loss. Her mother, Patricia Banks, had always been Camille's biggest cheerleader, pushing her to chase her dreams of becoming a lawyer. Losing her only daughter shattered her, but Patricia resolved to turn her pain into purpose. By late 2013, Patricia and a small group of supporters established the Camille Banks Foundation. The organization's mission was clear: to provide resources and advocacy for young women trapped in toxic and manipulative relationships. Through the foundation, Patricia hoped to ensure that no other woman would feel as isolated and powerless as her daughter had. The foundation quickly gained traction, hosting workshops, creating support groups, and launching an educational campaign focused on recognizing red flags in relationships. The foundation's first public event was held in January 2014, a little over 2 years after Camille's death. Hundreds gathered to honor her memory, many of them wearing purple ribbons, a symbol of resilience and hope. The speeches delivered by survivors of abusive relationships were heart-wrenching yet inspiring, giving the audience a glimpse of the foundation's impact. Patricia stood on stage, her voice steady, but her hands trembling, as she shared her daughter's story. Camille's photograph, displayed prominently, seemed to watch over the event, her radiant smile reminding everyone of the life taken too soon. Meanwhile, Desmond Chambers faced a starkly different reality. In prison, the former basketball superstar struggled to adjust to his new existence. The luxury and adoration he had once taken for granted were gone, replaced by the monotony and confinement of a cold cell. Desmond's days were now defined by routine. Early mornings spent cleaning, afternoons in the library, and long nights of restless reflection. Though Desmond had been convicted of second-degree murder, he continued to deny full responsibility for Camille's death. In interviews conducted from prison in 2014, Desmond maintained that her death had been an accident, a tragic result of an argument that spiraled out of control. Yet, his words often rang hollow, clouded by defensiveness and a refusal to confront the deeper truths of his actions. His attempts to appeal the conviction were met with little success, leaving him to grapple with the weight of his choices in solitude. As the years passed, Desmond became a forgotten figure in the sports world. His once prized achievements, MVP trophies, championship rings, and lucrative endorsement deals were now footnotes in a story of scandal and disgrace. Fans who had once chanted his name in packed arenas now spoke of him with disdain or not at all. Occasionally, a news story would surface about Desmond's prison life, but these stories were met with little interest, overshadowed by newer stars and fresher scandals. For Mia Chambers, the aftermath of her husband's conviction marked the beginning of a transformation she never anticipated. The divorce was finalized in mid-2013, and Mia, now free from the shadow of her husband's betrayal, began to rebuild her life. What had once been a partnership built on love and ambition had become a painful chapter she was determined to close. Mia used her share of the assets to start fresh, moving to New York City, where she immersed herself in the world of business and personal development. By 2015, Mia had reinvented herself as a motivational speaker and entrepreneur. Her talks, often centered on resilience and self-worth, drew large audiences, particularly women who had faced betrayal or loss. She spoke candidly about her experiences, framing her pain as a catalyst for growth. Mia's authenticity resonated with her audience, and she quickly became a sought-after speaker, appearing at conferences and on talk shows. She also launched a series of self-help books, the first of which, Breaking the Chains of Betrayal, became a bestseller. Mia's advocacy extended beyond words. She partnered with the Camille Banks Foundation, using her platform to amplify its mission. The collaboration was seen as a powerful symbol of unity and healing, with Mia and Patricia often appearing together at events. For Mia, working with the foundation was not just an act of penance, but a way to ensure Camille's legacy endured. As the years went by, Camille's story became a touchstone for discussions about power, manipulation, and the consequences of unchecked privilege. The foundation's impact grew, with its outreach programs expanding nationwide. Survivors who had once been voiceless found support and strength, often crediting Camille's legacy for their empowerment. Desmond, confined to his cell, could only watch from afar as the world moved on without him. The man who had once been on top of the world was now a cautionary tale, his name forever tied to the tragedy of Camille Banks. His reflections, though deepened by time, remained clouded by a refusal to fully accept his role in her death. Desmond often thought of Camille, her laughter, her beauty, and the choices he made that destroyed them both. But those thoughts were his alone, locked away with him in a life of regret and isolation. For Patricia, Mia, and the countless others touched by Camille's story, the pain of her loss was a constant undercurrent. Yet her memory lived on, not just in their hearts, but in the lives of the women her legacy continued to uplift. Camille Banks was gone, but her voice, amplified by those who loved her, refused to